So POIs, I'll be taking POIs in the text space, and I'll be taking POIs at my phone, so you can just ask POI. And the speaking orders for OGs or text space. Not preferred gender. So confirming for the last time that I'm audible if I start.
Yeah, you're audible.
Okay, thank you. Starting in 3, 2, 1. So panel, you get basically 4 ideas which were not basically analyzed enough for us to actually understand what is OO's claims. So the first thing they tell you is that there is no necessity for action because they did not see anything wrong with status quo. We think that the necessity for actually explaining the faith people have that is necessary because those doctrines in the step are established in such a way that people do not get to question their truism or actually establish exactly the facts that are surrounded around them. Example are the things that my partner already stated within his speech, right? This causes a problem when people begin to lose faith in those things that religion preaches because they are not explained with logic. And secondly, so the COO tells you that logic has nothing to do with religion and tries to link it to science. We think that logic in itself is a vital means of explanation because logic talks about reasoning and rationality. And rationality of human beings to actually think is what religion tries to appeal to when it imposes its doctrine on them. So basically, it's quite comfortable for religious institutions to actually establish it as a medium of interpreting their preachings in churches, etc. Because in itself, it actually deals on human rationality to accept those doctrines in preachers. And then also they talk about how it dissolves the superiority given to this particular supreme being. We do not see how it's quite effective enough that if people have faith in a higher power, that they begin to lose it when you explain to them exactly how this higher power operates and why it's necessary for them to have extreme faith in it. We did not get that thin line analysis on where they show us clearly that God or Allah or whatever loses its value when its people are beginning to actually to allow to explain the doctrines of the Quran on the Bible using logical reasoning. And then also they talk about workability, which is not something to be put into consideration because the motion clearly states that this will be done by religious bodies, and we think it's comfortable by us on from OG side because these people have access and they are the ones that establish these principles and preaches. So basically, they are comfortable enough to do this, and capacity or capability should not be a point of contention in this debate. So, a few points of clarity before I move over to my argumentation. First point of clarity is that OO means that this is a preference motion, not a policy motion to attack any model because we're not proposing any model. And then, secondly, active propagation actually means intense acknowledgement of this new form of interpretation as a formal ideology within religious spectrums. And we think this means that, or this entails that these religious bodies, which Dinoni has already explained to you what they look like and who they are, will actually start imposing these things in their preachings, their meeting, community conferences, where people find their solace in interpreting their faith in higher powers like God preached by Christianity, Allah preached by Muslims. Those things will be applied that people get to use logic and reasoning, right, which is the sole purpose of logic, to explain those things to those particular set of people. What does this actually look like and why is this necessarily important? We think that trying to explain things to Christians like you should not have sex before marriage because it's against your faith in God is just not enough for most people who are very, very intrinsically explorative within the modern day society. The logical aspect of this interpretation should be that there are certain diseases that may come from you having unprotected state, or if you do not have consent to within the modernized society to apply and relate to within the modernized society that we live in, which does not inherently affect their faith, but inherently increases their faith more in the superior being, to tell them that this particular person that they do not know or know where he lives actually cares about their safety in the society and how stabilized the society is. This explanation can actually be appealed to people and they can relate to it. And the old explanations we get without formal interpretation, OO doesn't understand. Secondly, explaining things like festivals, communions, etc., should be done clearly, and people need to understand the origin. That only comes with logical explanation. We just get fairy tales and story tales that are extraordinary, and people cannot imagine it clearly unless they put it on DVDs, cartoons, etc., for you to picture what it looks like. Even though this cannot be done with reasoning, but there's a clean line that comes with actually explaining it more to people in a way that they get to relate with it with rationality. The third point in this speech is going to show you what is best for Christianity, Islam, any form of religions, through religious institutions actually carrying out this new format of interpretation, and why that is can only be done through explanation of this, the faith people have, this higher being through logic. The first thing is that the world we live in has shifted into a realm of discussions, questioning, and individuals finding themselves in newer versions. Within the religion needs to actually continue to be a vital part of such a society by allowing individuals to actually find safe scope in it. This can only do this by allowing for human interaction with the superior beings, by enhancing the interpretations that come with the existence of such beings, and by allowing for the explanation of such beings through logic. And this is quite important because this is where we see the interpretation of such beings through logic. And this is quite important because we cannot explain opposite sexes, all our abominations, without logical explanations on why God created two opposite sexes. The logical sense that people can easily relate to is that God created two opposite sexes because he wanted to explain why he created two opposite sexes. And this is why we see two opposite sexes for example in the Bible. And this is why we see two opposite sexes in the Bible. And this is why we see two opposite sexes in the Bible. And this is why we see two opposite sexes in the Bible. And this is why we see two opposite sexes in the Bible. And this is why we see two opposite sexes in the Bible. And this is why we see two opposite sexes in the Bible. And this is why we see two opposite sexes in the Bible. And this is why we see two opposite sexes in the Bible. And this is why we see two opposite sexes in the Bible. It's quite important because I understand as a result of this nationality by creation involves that religion continues to play a vital role in it. We do not need indoctrinated preachings that are lacking of logical sense in itself, that people cannot relate to it wholly of what the religion preaches for its faith in higher beings actually look like and what it means like. So basically, we think it's illogical for certain doctrines in the Bible not to explain fully why certain things like women have to be submissive because it's against God's will, etc., etc. Certain logical things and understanding that people can easily relate to would actually lead to certain things that preserve religion more, especially discourse and rational thinking that comes from individuals interacting with each other better without any form of discrimination, and any form of stuff that can actually lead to segregation of certain people that may not succumb to religious expression in itself. And then lastly, we need to understand that the relationship we have with the so-called supreme faith, in most cases within the present day interpretation that comes with religious bodies, actually clashes with people's aid, does not allow you to question certain things because it is not explained with logic. It's explained with your pastors in churches, and it's explained with certain things that you cannot question because this superior being is protected in such a way that is higher than in all superiority. His spirituality or whatever is not questioned by allowing logic to use to explain it, but logic is used to explain in such a way that people get to understand their relationship with this said person and why those said person set certain rules and standards that they need to comply with. This leads to more cohabitation and more interaction among religious peoples and allow them to actually understand with high level of rationality why certain actions should be taken and not be actually allow people not to question certain things when you know at the end of the day they're going to question. Religion is allowed to develop and people live with it. We are proud to propose.
All right. Thank you, Speaker, for that wonderful speech. Now, the House calls upon the Leader of Opposition to continue the case for opening opposition. Here, here.
Oh, yeah. Am I audible enough? Am I audible enough? Can you
You,
hear me?
you're
Can you
breaking.
hear
You're
me?
breaking.
Can you?
Let me ask you a partner. I thought you were I impersonating Cleopatra. Or your name is
For
what?
Sage Uchipo, she's my partner.
All right. So she's not I impersonating anymore.
Battery got power back, so I'm
Who
still
will
in.
state the speaker order in the chat space? You continue with your speech. Let your partner handle that.
bridges and the whole rest of other thing. And they are self-actualized, and religion is best preserved in that particular instance for him, right? So in their world, what you wants us to do is to start doing logical interpretation on why this person should not kill these people, or why this person should kill this particular people. And we feel this is very problematic, right? Because to a great extent, religion is something that is beyond most men of faith, right? So secondly, on how subjectivity of interpretation destroys the religion, right? Religion is something that is beyond most men of faith, right? So secondly, on how subjectivity of interpretation destroys the religion. If you listen very well, I talked about this in my first argument, right? But I'll be explaining more on it, more on it as a second engagement on that, right? On how subjectivity of interpretation destroys religion, right? So in their world, situation where you have a very conservative being gay is bad or being gay is not bad based on logic, right? Individuals most times have certain understanding of certain stuff based on the society which they find themselves. When you meet a pastor who is liberal, he will give you explanation on why Christian religion does not really support gay, even after we're looking for a way in which those persons can actually change and conform with what those religions stand for, right? But in their world, what they tell you is this, that anybody can actually do this, and we feel this is very bad, right? Because when it's left in the hands of persons to do this, subjective views will fly. Individuals will give different logic of why gay is bad and the whole
Speaker,
rest of other thing. It
hello,
doesn't really make sense when you come to see.
hello.
Yeah, it doesn't really make sense when
Yo, I
you
post your timer. Am I audible to you?
saying.
I post your timer. Am I audible to you? You're breaking badly. Hello?
How many things? Sorry, I can't see the I can't see the time. Can you
Said,
hear me?
can you? I said, can you reconnect?
Okay. Can you hear me?
Can you say something a bit long?
Can you hear me?
Wow, that was very long. Yeah, I can hear you now.
Should I continue?
Yes, you can continue.
Okay. Like I was saying on
Wait,
how interpret subjectivity. Ah, can I go on?
no,
Can I go on?
you're still breaking.
Let me change the location.
Yes, please do that.
Is it better now?
No, it's not.
Is it hello? Ah, God. I'm entering my toilet now. Is it better now?
Yeah,
Huh?
you're better now. Yes, you're much better.
Is it better?
Yes, yes.
So, oh God help me. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Can I go on? I'll start. We're starting in three, two, one. So on subjectivity, notice how this allowing this particular stuff in the hands of these preachers will cause a whole lot of problem. And what will happen at the end of the day is that religion will lose out a whole lot of buying, because most persons may have a different logical understanding of that particular stuff, different from what this particular spirit head or this priest will tell them in churches, or what this imam will tell them in mosques and the whole rest of other thing. And this is the problem we are trying to avoid, right? In their world, they don't really tell us how this particular the already existing status quo is a big deal. They didn't really show us that, right? And that is the problem we have, right? If this particular stuff has caused a whole lot of harm, like what they say in their word, then it will have make no sense. But even if it has caused a whole lot of harm, in the solid the harm is that individuals have been that if individuals don't get this information, or if they don't get logical reason, they don't actually like buy out they don't necessarily buy into religion. That's not really a problem, right? Then in the situation where you actually do this thing, you actually destroy the whole core of that particular religion, right? religion. Because at the end of the day, I don't who may even to look for ways in which they can mediate between the other. Most times, the state sees religion as a competitor because religion clamps down on most of the laws which the state make, right? What then happen in this particular instance is this spiritual head can be bribed by this particular state to give logic based on what will suit that particular state and the whole rest of other stuff. So what would then happen is in that particular instance is the pure ideology of Christianity or the pure ideology of this particular religion will be clamped down upon, and this is what we feel should not happen in today's debate, right? So last, now we're proving the intangible nature of religion, right? And this is like the very important thing which we should not ignore in today's debate, right? The reason why individuals most times encounter some kinds of things in life and they'll be like, God understands better. And to a great extent, they don't necessarily have that self guilt that they made wrong choices. They actually believe their choices are being controlled by the Lord. So if they encounter misfortune to a great extent, God has better explanation to that particular stuff. Have some kind of covering. Individuals don't necessarily kill themselves or commit suicide based on what has happened to them, right? But in their world, right? In their world, what they tell you is they was being made, and why this person is made mistakes was being made, and why this person is made decisions and the whole rest of other thing. Most times, which is even beyond this particular person's power, the harm of
Speaker,
the harm of that particular
you are
okay.
all right. Thank you very much for that wonderful speech, and that marks the end for opening half of this debate. Now, the House calls upon the member of government to begin the debate for closing half. Here, here. Yes, you're clear.
And yeah, I mean that's it. And please don't spam chat. That's a request. Distracts me a lot. And if I don't respond,
But I was already
yeah,
timing you though, but it's alright.
fair. No worries. Cool.
Sure.
Okay. Starting my speech in three, two, and one. Panel opening half is a mess because opening government at best tries to explain to you why it's very important to justify the impalatable to individuals insofar as you get more buy-in. At all points in time, they never explain never really tell you who do these individuals ever look like and why their buy-in is very important within this debate. At closing government, firstly, I'm going to do that. Let's also take first opening opposition out of this debate. I think firstly at LO, their first question is, oh look, what the problem within this debate is that government bench does not mechanize it. I think firstly it's a prefers motion. So insofar as religious organizations have capital, I think at all points in time they can enforce these narratives. Opening government has only two mechanisms. Insofar as they first prove to you that you are probably going to say that these things are palatable, and secondly, just the fact that all things that happen in the world probably rest in the hands of God. I have two additional mechanisms because opening opposition is right as all these mechanisms already exist in status quo insofar as buy-in already exists. I think the problem is what happens after you buy in. I think the key distinction that one, and the second thing that after giving you things like quantifiable outcome, I think the likely idea becomes science. Insofar as at opposition, there is a conflict that already exists between science and religion, and opening government is failed to address this within this debate. The benefit of having individuals who believe in science. Why science is important? Because in a world that you are probably moving into technological innovation, the need for scientific innovation is scientific religions and do not have any sort of rational ability to question these religions. The problem then at opposition becomes that there is a whitewashing of the third world countries by the first world, and this is exactly the point that if we go ahead and prefer a world, what happens is probably first world or third world countries now have religions which probably justify you to through things like logic. Insofar as whitewashing is way better, or probably doesn't happen in government bench. The point at which if the Western countries do not have any reasonable metrics to go ahead and do things like discrimination, against first world countries. This is a first open government never recognizes. Insofar as you get more individuals, things like people who have a rational minded thinking, and the point at which religions are able to justify things through logic of why a certain bad actually happened. Insofar as things like karma exist, and at all points then it becomes worse off for minorities at opposition. The point at which something bad happens to you, you always told that it might have done some sort of bad action, and force minorities to go ahead and join the religions. I think there is a lot of accountability now that comes upon them, opening up because your outcomes aren't quantifiable. At opening opposition, then the third concern becomes, oh look, what you're also going to happen is the point at which things like bad things happen to people, you're going to commit suicide. I'm going to flip it on them and say, hey, here's what happens. Things like karma exist in religions, and the point at which something bad happens to you, you are always told that you might have done some sort of bad action, and force minorities to go ahead and join the religions. I think there is a lot of accountability now that comes upon them, opening up I think this becomes worse off for minorities at opposition, the point at which you're not able to justify them to things like logic of why a certain bad actually happened, insofar as things like karma exist, and at all points then it becomes a tool that majority individuals use to weaponize it against people within religions. I think there is a lot of accountability now that comes upon them insofar as they can't do bad actions and force minorities to go ahead and join the religions. I think on a net, there are probably more forced conversions in opposition. The point at which there is this growing narrative that religion is going to give you everything, but actually the point at which you opt in, you don't get that much insofar as they teach you inherently bad things in the third world. Fifthly, then I think it's individuals are more able to go ahead and
That
reject these ideas in the form of admission. They will okay, proud to be on the
all right. Thank you very much for that wonderful speech. Now the House calls upon the member of opposition to continue the case for opposition. Here, here.
Am I audible?
Yeah, you're clear.
Right, great. So I would want the timer in the text space as usual. And then if you have a POI, please don't unmute. Please explain, and I'll take care of my own discretion. Gender pronouns, he, him. I'll be starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Hello. We cannot explain the existence of the world, how the world came back into existence, right? Big Bang theory tried to explain this. It was not enough to convince me. Secondly, the existence of human being has become something that is problematic. We still cannot explain it, right? Evolution is still deficient in explaining the logic behind how human being came into existence. Thirdly, the existence of higher heavens and multigalaxies, astronomy and astrophysics still cannot explain this in status quo. By all this, what it means is that by all this, it looks like religious people still. It means that faith is not necessarily against reason, right? But beyond the concept of logic and reason, something that OG could not take their hard stance and defend. And I think CG has followed suit, right? In cases, it means that in areas where religion can be explained with logic, it is done in status quo. For instance, if you look at people like the Jews and the rest, they don't take things like pork and then they don't take things like the puffer fish. This is because they have explanation that is extremely dangerous even before their belief, right? That is something that you should note. Secondly, they are advised to rest on the Sabbath, not just because this is their belief, but because it is believed that as man, you need to have a day of rest for yourself. It means that at every point in time, faith itself has a bit of logic in it, but at a point where we cannot explain it with logic, that is what opening government and closing government are supposed to take their hard stance of defending and telling us that even when we cannot find logic to it, we ought to explain it with science, right? Something that's very important. That's their logic, why it's still best for religion and why our world is better than their world. Before then, a couple of engagements to closing government because I feel like they become the most contextual thing in these days bits, which is queer religion for explanation, various explanations to get people into it, to get minorities into it. So what they are saying is that let's dilute religion. They say that we need to explain religion with logic. For example, gay gays need to be explained with logic. says that once we even our logic, so we think it's absolutely flawed, something that we cannot even engage within as speech, right? Within two main things in my speech. First of all, I'm going to interrogate the existence of religion without speech or without faith and why that is problematic. And secondly, I'm going to compare both worlds, which one is ultimately better for religion, because this is a comparative motion, right? Now, first, right, I'm dealing with why we need to interrogate the existence of religion without faith, right? First of all, we need to recognize that what's thing that it is that you actually believe in it, do not see it. So that is the basis of religion, the foundation of religion. In this case, religion falls into theology. So it's like I'm believing in religion because I have a belief. That's theology. On a comparative, on God's world, we force religion to be explained even in areas you cannot explain, right? Two things ultimately happen.
Just two things.
Thank you. And that's what my second argument. My first argument was to deal with you that even your whole analysis was to say that we need to explain it is something that is illogical, won't happen in the first place. My second argument is on a comparative, which world better serves religion. That's what I'm going to do with it, to show you why where OG falls